controls. And it just means that we make sure that we're doing a comparison, that we know that we were going to get some disease and that the plants were pretty healthy before we inoculated them. We do eradication work as well, but a lot of the things you're going to see today are preventative trials. And you can see we don't just test one thing at a time. We look at many, many products all at the same time. Here we're looking at Trinity, which is a product that is in the sterile inhibitor class, and it's also a BASF product that they're looking at this point, and then palladium and medallion. So we look at quite a few things all at once just to do decent comparisons, and there very often you see rates. Some of the rates that we looked at here are actually a little bit below the labeled rates in certain cases because they were experimental trials. We were in a position of trying to help BASF find out what the rate ought to be. So they may be lower than the label turned out, so you need to definitely stick with the label when it comes to what you decide to use. But you can see here what a good job Pageant did at 4 or 8 ounces per 100 gallons on this alternaria leaf spot. Trinity also doing a really good job, which is one reason we hope to see this in the next few years. Other products, our inclusion in this trial of medallion, that is the chemical standard that we often use for alternaria leaf spots. And you can see we had 100% control here with that product. Let's look at another alternaria. On impatiens, so it's a different alternaria species, but it is very similar results. You see again, we actually got a whole lot more spots with this one, 30 spots per plant for the inoculated controls. Pageant at 4 and 8 ounces, almost 100% control. So in a preventative trial, extremely effective, and it was on a 14-day interval, which is stretching it a little bit sometimes for certain of these leaf spots. Sometimes you have to be at 7 days. See the same kind of results here with Trinity that we saw on the pittosporum, and then also medallion again as that positive chemical standard. So alternaria has become, at least in my book, this is a really good use for the Pageant if you have an alternaria concern. Finally, at times, most of the trials, probably 90% of the trials we do on our own property. We've got a variety of small greenhouses and we inoculate, and that way we don't have to be worried about taking a disease into a nursery. But sometimes we're able to do field trials, and there are a lot of alstroemeria grown in Southern California for cut flowers. And in that case, we were able to do a trial down in the field, in the cut flower field, and to try and see if we could create a difference or see if we could get any kind of control after alternaria was going pretty good. And these alstroemeria beds are about 3 feet wide and this tall. So it's very dense foliage. They were sprayed by one of the other cooperators that works quite a lot with BASF, and that's Buzz Huber down in San Diego. And he sprayed them 4 times on a 10-day interval. And then I went in there and I raised them. And I was very, very impressed with how well both Heritage and then Pageant did at knocking down all of the new spots. We had the old spots on the plants, but new development of disease was extremely low. And you can see one of their standards, and this is one of the reasons field trials are so fun to do. One of the chemical standards for the grower was the Chipco 26 GT, and it clearly was a failure. This is not effective in this particular alternaria leaf spot. So the 3 of the alternaria trials that I showed you, they all have a different species of alternaria. And I know that BASF has just a huge number more tests in this genus and a lot of experience with it. And I think that it does support giving a try of alternaria to control alternaria with Pageant. I think that's the end of alternaria. Does anybody have any questions on that kind of thing? Okay. One thing that's been fun for me about writing a newsletter, and we do write a newsletter every month about the trials that we do and things that are going on in the industry, is that periodically my friends from other places will say, you know what, we finished a trial on this and you just might want to know about it. So when they've managed to tell me that a couple times, I figure they're serious, so then I put it in the newsletter, and of course they all get credit for it. But this is one of those situations. Bob Mulrooney works for University of Delaware, and he did some work for a couple years running, and I think he did do it with BASF. And he did these trials, and he was so excited by it that he sent it to me, and since we usually don't get real good black spot trials, I was very happy to see it too. Black spot on roses is really hard to control. He did a trial 2 different years, some of the same treatments were used. The first year he was looking at Insignia and Pageant, and you can see Pageant did pretty well. It's statistically better than when water was used, so it is significant, but it's not necessarily a great level of control that year. The chemical control he was using that year was Eagle, so this is cysteine. It did a really good job, and it was a little bit better than the Pageant. However, when he went in the next year, he rated them a little bit different way. And in that case, he got excellent control with Pageant. So this is a very good target. And the other thing that's kind of fun, well, there's a lot of really weird things that plant pathologists think are fun. When you do trials, very often something comes in adventitiously. It's kind of like a 2-for-1 trial. And he ended up with powdery mildew the second year as well. So he rated powdery mildew at the same time, and you can see very, very good control of powdery mildew. With the Pageant, maybe a little tiny bit better with the lower rate, which is something that could be just a fluke, and it also could be, you know, just, it's possible that once in a while you get a little bit better control at lower rates, and it's not always obvious why. But at any rate, he did get some good control of powdery mildew as well. Other leaf spots. Slender cladium is something you don't see a heck of a lot, but it is getting to be more and more common throughout the South. It is a big problem in tropicals, and in California we've got slender cladium causing problems on myrtle. And in this particular case, it actually causes crown rot and kills the plants more often, but in propagation we see leaf spots. So we went ahead and did a trial on this. A rating here is, this is number of spots, so we had a teeny bit of cylindrocladium just happening to be on those unrooted cuttings. But we had quite a bit more developed when we inoculated them. And we did not get very good control in general. We got Medallion as, actually Medallion is probably the best product so far on cylindrocladium, Medallion and Heritage actually. But they didn't do real well here, but certainly the Pageant did roughly the same. Insignia also did just as well as the Heritage. So just in, in case you think that BASF had any choice whatsoever about what I talked about today, they didn't. I put in what I could put in to show you what we knew about it. I did guarantee them that I didn't have anything hiding that I was going to spring on them today. But it doesn't work on everything, no. It doesn't work on everything at all times. As you can see, most fungicides don't.